is a type of microscope that relies on tiny particles called electrons instead of light in order to generate an image. You've probably worked with light microscopes before. They're relatively small and have magnification lenses you can use to look at a sample on a slide. But it's less likely you've worked with a scanning electron microscope before. That's why this lesson will help you learn more about how one works and what it's used for. The basics of how a scanning electron microscope works are not too hard to understand. This type of microscope uses a beam of electrons. An electron is a very light subatomic particle with a negative charge. You've surely heard of them when you studied electrons, protons, and neutrons, which help make up atoms. Well, a scanning electron microscope uses an electron gun to produce this beam of electrons. The electron beam then moves vertically through the microscope. As it does so, it courses through various electromagnetic lenses and fields. These help focus the electron beam on whatever sample is being analyzed. After the beam hits the sample discharges electrons and a form of electromagnetic radiation known as X-rays. These latter X-rays and electrons are detected by structures called, unsurprisingly, detectors. The detectors convert all of this into a signal which is sent to a screen where an image is produced. It's important to note that a scanning electron microscope is used to image and thus study the surface of a sample. This should be contrasted with another kind of electron-based microscope called a transmissible electron microscope, TEM. A transmissible electron microscope helps you see inside of a sample. A scanning electron microscope does not. Compared to a regular light microscope you probably used in school, a scanning electron microscope helps us see things that are much smaller than what a light microscope could show us. An SEM can also help us see closely spaced objects much better than a light microscope. So where or why would a scanning electron microscope be used then? It turns out it's useful for a lot of things. An SEM can help compare bullet markings in order to identify a firearm during a police investigation. Image the surface structure and texture of pollen grains for scientific investigation. Help reveal the chemical composition of a substance being looked at. Determine the crystalline structure and orientation of a material. As a result, scanning electron microscopy can be used in a wide variety of fields, such as biology, gemology, metallurgy, forensic science. A scanning electron microscope, SEM, is a type of microscope that relies on tiny particles called electrons in order to generate an image. An electron is a very light subatomic particle with a negative charge. A scanning electron microscope uses an electron gun to produce a beam of electrons that travels vertically through electromagnetic lenses towards the sample. Once it hits the sample discharges electrons as well as X-rays, which detectors detect. The detectors then convert everything into a signal, which helps form an image. X-rays, by the way, are a form of electromagnetic radiation. This entire process helps an SEM form an image of the surface of a sample. People in the fields of gemology, metallurgy, biology, and forensic science use scanning electron microscopy for various things, like to image the surface of a structure, to help reveal the chemical composition of a substance, to determine the crystalline structure and orientation of a material.